If you're watching this, you're 100% a horror fanatic and we approve. Let us know where you are watching this from and be a part of our community. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support means everything. Let's start. The world had gone quiet. Cities locked down. Streets emptied. People fled to escape the virus like it was something with teeth. That's how we ended up at my grandfather's old lake house near the edge of Ashgrove Lake in rural Maine. It was late March, and the air was still sharp with winter's breath. The place was usually buzzing in summer with boats, music, the smell of burning charcoal. Now, it felt like a place forgotten by time. My dad, my younger twin brothers, Wes and Jamie, and I had been cooped up for a week already, trying to make the most of a weird, lonely spring. That night, we set up the deck for a little distraction. Beer pong under the dull glow of string lights and the crackle of a fire pit. The sun had just dipped beyond the pines, painting the sky a dull orange at the edges while the lake mirrored the dimming light, still as glass. We laughed, clinked red Solo cups, and let the speaker play its background soundtrack to an otherwise muted world. That's when it happened. Jamie suddenly stopped mid-throw and reached over to lower the speaker volume. "Shoo! Did you hear that?" he whispered. Wes was already staring past the railing of the deck, eyes squinting into the darkness below. "What is it?" my dad asked, stepping beside them. "Someone's down there," Jamie said, voice low. They walked onto the deck. I swear it. That didn't make sense. Our deck had no stairs. You had to go inside and through the back door to reach the area beneath. Dad and I exchanged a look before heading inside and down. We stepped out the back door with a flashlight, sweeping the narrow gravel stretch beneath the deck. The firelight above flickered through the cracks in the boards, casting fractured shadows over damp leaves and the old wooden beams. But no one was there. "Anyone out here?" my dad called. Silence answered. We circled the property, found nothing, and returned upstairs. Jamie and Wes stood nervously, swearing they both heard a voice under the deck. Someone speaking. We weren't laughing anymore. We shut off the music, doused the fire pit, and went inside, locking the doors behind us. My parents headed to the loft bedroom. I camped out in the living room with my controller, half listening to the dull hum of the TV and trying to shake the creeping feeling that someone had been watching us. That's when the banging started. The sliding glass door behind the curtain shuddered violently, followed by a man's voice, shrieking, screaming for help. I froze, heart lurching. My dad's footsteps pounded down the stairs, my brothers rushing in after him. He yanked the curtain open. A man stood there, face flushed red, eyes wide, hands smearing against the glass as he shouted, "Help me! Let me in! I'm hurt!" My dad didn't open the door. "Where are you hurt?" he asked through the glass. No answer, just the same frantic plea. "Let me in! I'm hurt!" Something was wrong. "Back off!" my dad shouted. "Leave now or we call the police." He pulled the curtain shut and barked at us to check every window, make sure they were locked. We stayed together in the living room for hours, half watching a movie, half listening for footsteps. Eventually, the silence outside lulled us into a fragile sense of safety. We each went to bed cautiously. I was in the guest room, biggest of all, but the only one without a lock on the door. Around 1 a.m., the crash came, glass shattering. I jumped from the bed. My heart leapt into my throat. I picked up my phone and called my dad's cell. He answered in a whisper. I heard it. "Stay in your room. Lock the door." "No lock," I reminded him. "I'll hide. Closet. Call your brothers." "I'm calling the cops." I crept to the closet, trying to avoid the creaky floorboards. The hinges gave a soft whine as I closed myself inside. I ducked behind an old laundry bag, texted Wes and Jamie. Both were awake. Both had locked themselves in. Then I heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Boards creaking in the living room, then just outside my bedroom door. The door opened. From between the narrow slits of the closet, I watched a shape enter. A man. He sat on the edge of my bed, took off his shoe, shook it like there was something inside. Then he looked directly at the closet. "I know you're in there," he said. His voice was tired, flat. "I'm sure your family called the cops." He sighed, like he wasn't sure what to do next. And neither was I. Seconds ticked by, slow and suffocating. Then I moved. I exploded from the closet with a scream, barreling toward the door. My chest braced for his hands, for the weight of him dragging me down. But he didn't move. I tore through the hallway and up the loft stairs, banging on the bedroom door. My dad pulled it open, dragged me inside. We waited, hearts pounding, until we heard the front door open again. This time, police voices calling out. When they cleared the house, the man was gone. He had broken the back door's glass pane to get in. We searched every inch of the house. Every closet, cabinet, crawl space. Empty. The officers told us to cover the door with garbage bags for the night and keep watch. My dad stayed in the living room armed with a bat. First light, he drove to town for new glass. A week's gone by. No sign of the man. But we haven't left the lake house. We're still in quarantine. And every night I double-check the closet before I sleep, just in case he comes back. The city was unrecognizable. I had stayed behind in Elmhurst, New Jersey when the pandemic hit hard. My roommate, Callie, went back to Ohio to stay with her family, but I figured I'd be fine alone. Our apartment was on the 3rd floor of an old walk-up. Nothing fancy, but it was safe enough, or so I thought. It was about a week into strict lockdown. The streets outside were eerily silent, just the occasional distant siren or dog bark. I rationed food to avoid going out, but eventually my cupboards ran dry. I had no choice. I threw on my mask, gloves, and hoodie and walked the 6 blocks to the only open grocer, Delaney's Market. The trip was hell. Shelves stripped bare, aisles crowded, people panicking, everyone avoiding eye contact like it was a threat. The sun had dipped by the time I left, arms aching with grocery bags. The streets were darker than I remembered, not just unlit but void. It felt like I was walking through a painting of the world rather than the world itself. Then, as I passed an alley near my building, a man stepped out. He was wearing a cloth mask and gloves. He looked about 30. His eyes were red-rimmed, but not from tears, just tiredness, or maybe something worse. In his arms, he carried what looked like a bundled-up infant wrapped in a small fleece blanket. "Hey, excuse me," he said, his voice cracking like he hadn't used it in hours. I backed up a step automatically. He held out the bundle. "It's my son. I need to change him and feed him. Please, I just need 5 minutes inside somewhere warm. Just 5. We're both clean." The baby whimpered soft, high-pitched cries from under the folds. I stared at him, my gut twisted. I wanted to say no. I wanted to keep walking, but it was the baby. I nodded slowly. "Okay, I live just up the block." "Quick, though." He followed me silently, 3 flights up. My keys jingled too loud in the stairwell. I opened the apartment door and told him to close it behind him. I cleared a space on the living room table for him to change the baby. "I'll get you some water," I offered, walking to the kitchen. But when I turned around, he wasn't where I left him. He was pacing, opening drawers, scanning shelves, his head tilted at strange angles like he was taking mental inventory. "Hey," I called. "The table's ready." He didn't answer. I walked over to him, confused. That's when I noticed something strange. He was holding the baby bundle in one arm like it weighed nothing. Too light. I stepped closer and froze. It wasn't a baby. It was a doll. A hyper-realistic infant doll. The kind that breathes and cries and twitches, made for parenting classes or grieving parents. It even had synthetic hair matted down under the blanket. He turned his head slowly toward me, eyes glassy and wide. From his coat pocket, he pulled a gun. Black, sleek. I couldn't tell if it was real, but it was aimed at my face all the same. "I'm gonna take what I need," he said softly, "and you're gonna stay where I can see you." I nodded. My legs locked up. My heart slammed in my chest. He pulled a garbage bag from his backpack and started sweeping things into it. My phone, my roommate's jewelry, my watch, a few kitchen gadgets. He even unplugged my brother's Xbox from under the TV. I stood frozen, watching as he moved with eerie calm. When the bag was full, he tucked the doll inside too. Then he walked out. I locked the door behind him, then fell to my knees and called the cops. When they arrived, they helped me access the security cameras in the hallway. The man's face was covered, of course. Hat, mask, gloves. Nothing identifiable. All I could do was write a report, make a list of what he took, and wonder what kind of person uses a fake baby to gain trust. I haven't opened the door for anyone since. Not delivery drivers, not neighbors, not even when someone knocked softly the next night. Because now I know, in a world full of fear, some people become predators, and they carry dolls instead of weapons until it's time to show both. During the peak of lockdown, I was living alone in a ground-floor apartment in the south end of Briar Hill, a quiet little town that suddenly felt more like a ghost village. The house was a two-family rental, with me on the bottom floor and another tenant, Caleb, living upstairs. I didn't know Caleb well. We chatted on the porch a few times before the pandemic, and he always struck me as eccentric but harmless. Pale guy in his late 30s, big into bird watching and old radio programs. Nothing about him screamed dangerous, just odd. Things started getting strange 1 week into quarantine. It was past midnight, and I had an early virtual meeting the next morning. Just as I was settling into bed, I heard heavy footsteps upstairs. Thud, thud, thud. It sounded like Caleb was stomping around in work boots. At first, I figured he'd dropped something or was maybe rearranging furniture. But the noise went on, and on. Over 20 minutes of dragging, pounding, pacing. It had a rhythm like someone circling the same path again and again. Frustrated, I pulled on a hoodie and went outside to knock on his door. No answer. I knocked again, louder. Still nothing. The footsteps stopped not long after I gave up and went back inside. I was annoyed but too tired to stew over it. Later that night, 2:30 a.m., I woke up shivering. My window was open, only about a foot, but wide enough to notice the cold. I never left that window open. Not in March. Not at all. I'd been locked inside for days. There was no reason for that window to be unlatched. The air in the room felt wrong. Still but charged like before a thunderstorm. I shut the window slowly, my hands trembling. I checked under the bed, the closet, the kitchen. Nothing. Just silence. I convinced myself I must have left it open. That paranoia was just getting the better of me. But the next night it happened again. The thumping returned. Heavy, deliberate, like someone pacing with intent. Occasionally, I swore I could hear the sound of metal scraping wood, like a tool being dragged across the floor. This time I didn't just knock. I pounded on the upstairs door. "Caleb! Hey!" No reply. Back inside. I scrolled through my phone until I found an old text thread from months ago. Buried in it was his number. I called once. No answer. Twice. Nothing. The third time he picked up. His voice was groggy, like I'd woken him. "What's up?" he mumbled. "Are you serious right now?" I snapped. "Can you stop stomping around? You've been doing it for hours." "What?" he said, confused. "I'm not there." My heart stopped. "I left a week ago. Went to stay with my sister upstate." I didn't speak. Couldn't. "Wait, why? What's going on?" he asked. I hung up, dialed 911 immediately. While I was on the phone, I heard it again. From my bedroom window, click. Someone trying to lift the lock. I screamed into the receiver and ducked out of the room. The dispatcher told me to stay calm, stay hidden, stay on the line. Officers were already en route. I crouched behind the kitchen island, heart hammering, listening for footsteps. They never came. But 20 minutes later, I watched from the porch as 4 officers entered the house with flashlights drawn. I followed them upstairs, slowly. The door was unlocked. Inside, the place was in shambles. Caleb's apartment looked like someone had been living there. Someone who didn't belong. The furniture had been moved. There were piles of crumbs on the floor, wrappers, signs of recent occupation. And sitting on the couch was a man. His hair was long, gray, and matted. His clothes hung off him like they'd been soaked and dried without care. He stared at the ceiling, muttering and laughing under his breath. When the officers approached, he barely resisted. But as they cuffed him, he locked eyes with me and grinned. Then he pointed right at me, like he'd known I'd be watching, like he was proud I had. I stepped outside and leaned against the porch railing, trying to catch my breath. One of the officers came down and told me they'd check with Caleb about what, if anything, had been taken. They weren't sure how the man had gotten in. Caleb returned the next day. He looked shaken, said he'd never given anyone a spare key. But the locks were old, flimsy. Someone could have picked them. Now every night I listen, not for Caleb's footsteps, but for something heavier, because I swear I still hear it sometimes.